Welcome back to Old School Sports and our OOTP 23 playthrough of the Pittsburgh Pirates. We are at opening day of the 2045 baseball season. Pirates had an excellent spring. Team is generally healthy, just at this point waiting for first baseman Luis Flores to finish up recovery from the ruptured MCL that cost him most of last season, or more accurately, half of last season. We'll be sending him on a rehab assignment probably for at least a week plus once he is healthy, since he's had no spring training whatsoever. But we'll be good to get him back on the team. Taking a look at our roster compared to last season, a couple key differences to talk about. We traded away longtime ace and the second most expensive contract we had on our team, Tony Santana, the 2043 Cy Young Award winner, to open up some salary cap space. So that means that rookies Juan Bin Daoud and Sal Valadez are both in the starting rotation when we start the season, behind our fragile ace, Luis Longoria, who is brilliant when he's healthy. Try to keep him healthy with a low pitch count. The veteran Bobby Gonzalez and the youngster Jose Montoya. Bullpen is very similar to what it has been over the last few years, but another rookie, Bobby Astorga, pitching out of the bullpen now, and he would be an option to move into the starting rotation if anybody falters or is injured. Looking at the everyday lineup, a few key additions. New second baseman Bobby Guzman, who we picked up when we traded away Tony Santana. Hopefully gives us a little more offense and a little better defense from the position. Third baseman Willie Medrano, picked up in a trade, also used some of the salary space that we freed up from getting rid of Mr. Santana to bring him on board. And then Vinny Tomei is going to be our first baseman against right-handers. Perennial all-star veteran player who still should have a decent power bat, we hope. Signed him to a one-year deal to hopefully give us a little bit of offense. And the big question as we begin this season, we traded away Santana to open up the money to be able to have guys like Tomei, Guzman, and Medrano on the team, because although we've made the playoffs 5 of our 7 years as general manager of the Pirates, in those 5 playoff appearances, 4 of them were as wild cards. Only one is as a division winner. And of those 5 playoff appearances, we've advanced to the NLCS only once in those years. So felt like what we were doing had gotten us to a plateau where we could be a playoff team, but we were not really a threat to win it all. And the hope is that hopefully the young pitchers we've brought up can replace what Santana was doing. The money that we freed up to have guys like Tomei, Guzman, and Medrano on board now, as well as some money to potentially bring on some additional contracts as we move throughout the season. Maybe that lets us take this team to the next level. And a big reason it's so important right now is that it could be our last year with 6-time All-Star in 6 Major League seasons, Rookie of the Year, 4-time Silver Slugger, 2-time MVP award winner Isaiah Hill. Could be our last year with him. We had signed him to a long-term contract, but he's going to be making $29 million next year. And when you look at our team's salary situation right now, we are about $35 million more next season than we're spending this season. So taking a $29 million contract out of there would just about get us right sized to what we have in terms of budget and player payroll availability. But the hope is that we have a great season on the field. We are successful. The fans are more interested. The fans get more loyal. Our budget gets increased, and we're able to have Hill back next year. but there are certainly no guarantees that that will happen. Before we get the season underway, also going to check in on the preseason predictions for our squad. And, this would be nice if it's accurate. If it's accurate, we will get a NL Central win. And we'd also have the second best record in the National League, which would give us a first round bye and keep us out of a wild card series. So I don't know if that will come to fruition, but certainly if we could get a NL Central title, that would be a big win, literally and figuratively. I don't think the Cardinals, who have been first in the division 4 straight years when we have been second in the division, are really going to be a 72-90 team. They've still got the third biggest player payroll in baseball, the biggest budget in all of baseball. And when you look at their pitching staff, well, maybe they had a bad simulation here, because it looks like they haven't really gotten down to a proper 26-man roster with 16 pitchers and 10 position players. So I'm guessing that simulation that just ran is not particularly accurate, although it looks like we're playing them today. I don't understand why they only have 10 position players on the roster. But if they keep this funky roster set up for another couple days, hey, we're starting off the season against them. Maybe getting some wins here while they've got a weird roster will be the boost we need to finally get past them in the NL Central this year. And the season off to a good start. We've won our first 2 games in St. Louis. You can see we've got 2 more in St. Louis before we head to Boston to continue the road trip. Before we get too big into the season, wanted to just check on the top prospects, not just in baseball, but also in our system. We are ranked 5th overall as far as the top systems in baseball, at least at the start of this year. Right fielder Julio Castillo, who we have moved up to high A ball, 21-year-old, is viewed as our best prospect. Pitcher Alex Arroyo, who we are moving up to Double A this year, is looked at the 33rd best prospect in baseball, second in our system. Catcher Sergio Brown was our number 1 pick last year. Played him in rookie ball where he hit fine. He is by trade a pitcher that we are switching to become a catcher. I think he's got a good personality, good defense, and right now his hitting does not, in terms of potential, look as good as it did even when we drafted him just 10 months ago, but still looked at as the number 55 prospect in baseball. Joel Fields is a guy who's in AAA. He should be ready to help us on the major league level at some point this year. And then Danny Pietri, international free agent signing from 2043, almost 19 years old, and we have moved him out of the international complex to play center field for one of our DSL teams. So those are the top prospects in our system right now, and you can see we are ranked 5th overall, so still a pretty good scouting and developmental effort going on with the Pirates. And we unfortunately didn't get the sweep against St. Louis. They took the final game at home 8-2, but still a 3-1 start on the road against our arch rival, who has been beating us up for years at this point, is still a pretty solid way to start the season. As I mentioned, head to Boston next, and then we get our first homestand of the season with 7 games against division rivals Cincinnati and Chicago. Things haven't gone as well in Boston in our first game in Cincinnati. 5-3 record now, so we're 2-2. So we did take 2 out of 3 in Boston, but just lost the first game of the series against Cincinnati. Our first baseman Flores is back from that MCL injury that kept him out the second half of last season. So we are going to get him right on a rehab assignment right now. And probably will keep him down there for a good chunk of the 20 days that he's eligible. coming off of a major injury. He's fragile already, and he's had no spring training, so he may need 2 to 3 weeks to shake off some of the rust at this point and hopefully get back to 100% health. And then we'll have an interesting decision to make if we don't have any injuries at the major league level between now and then, because there's not a obvious player on our 26-man roster, and more specifically the 14 position players we have, that we really want to dump down into AAA at this point. And here, as we're getting towards the end of April, still 2 games over 500, but a lot less impressive when you're 13-11 rather than 3-1 or even 5-3. So we've been playing 500 ball. You can see just did win a 14-inning game against St. Louis yesterday. Probably getting close to the point where we're going to need to make a decision on Flores. Only 2 days of injury time left. Although he does have hamstring tendonitis now. He's hitting well down there, 385 batting average in 8 games. But he's banged out for the next couple days, and then we're going to have to figure out what we're going to want to do to get him on the roster. So it'll be a good opportunity to check in. It'll be a small sample size, particularly with the backup players that we'd be likely to send down, but good opportunity to check in and see how some players are doing a couple of dozen games into the season. So our record is dipped down to 13-13 at this point, and we are 4.5 games behind the Reds, and the Cardinals have now passed us, though, so not really the start that we were looking for. Our bullpen, as it has been for several years, has been excellent thus far. Starting pitching not great, though. Luis Longoria doing his job with a 3-1 record, 44 strikeouts in 34 2/3 innings and a 2.86 ERA. Jose Montoya, despite the 0-4 record, has a 3.77 ERA. Bobby Gonzalez is 3-1 but a 4.82 ERA. But the 2 rookies, Bin Daoud and Valadez, are both 1-3 with pretty sickly earned run averages at this point. Bobby Astorga, who is another rookie that we could potentially move into the rotation, has been pitching better. Not going to make any changes right now, but the leash for both Bin Daoud and Valadez is probably getting a bit short, because at some point we're going to have to be above 500. Taking a look at the everyday players, and we'll throw up their batting stats to make it easy. Nelson Ibarra, brutal year, hitting just 134 so far. Mario Quiroz, who we had been thinking about moving down to the minors relatively soon, is hitting 375 in limited action. And his potential replacement has been banged up part of the year, although he's now healthy. Chris Rodriguez, can see, has played just 4 games, hitting 200 down in AAA. As soon as Mr. Quiroz starts to cool off, probably will be time to move on from him. Vinny Tomei hitting just 216, not great. Bobby Guzman hitting 267 is our new second baseman. Willie Medrano hitting just 233 is our new third baseman. Tony Cota hitting 222 is our shortstop, so not getting the offense we would have liked out of some of the infielders, really kind of most of the infielders. Isaiah Hill, 290 batting average, 10 homers, 17 runs driven in. He is doing his job. Arellano hitting 330, certainly doing his job. Henry Gonzalez hitting 277. And the rookie Alex Ruacho off to a rough start, batting just a $183 in 104 at-bats. We're getting him pretty regular playing time, but the youngster is not hitting as well as we would have hoped. So now the question is, who do we move down to AAA or look to trade away to open up some playing time for Flores at first base? And I think we're going to look to move on from Tony Rendon, a guy that we picked up before last season in a trade with the White Sox. Thought he could play a pretty big role for us as a utility infielder. You can see he's pretty versatile, can play first, second, and third, can play left, center, and right. Not a great bat. He does have some speed, but he hit just 225 for us last year and just one hit in 17 at-bats this year. The one hit is a double, which is nice, but he's also struck out 8 times in 17 at-bats. He's out of option years, so we would have to waive and DFA him. It's conceivable that we could sneak him through, but I'm at least going to see what we could get in trade for him in terms of prospects. I'm guessing it's not going to be all that exciting. There's actually a lot of players out there. Have to give this some thought. Maybe it's time to trade him away. And honestly, after looking through these players, none of them are all that exciting. You know, Aiden Gentry, a 25-year-old that we think has got 3.5 star potential, but kind of a generic-ish bullpen arm. Put up a 10-12 ERA in a small sample size this year. Better last year, but not an overwhelming pitcher. I think it is conceivable that we're going to lose Rendon, but I'll try to sneak him through to AAA, and that will allow us to get Flores up to the Major League roster, and we'll give the lineup a little thought right now. Kind of probably want to make sure that Vinny Tomei is still getting regular playing time against right-handed bats, but we're going to want Flores in the lineup every day too. One of the better contact hitters on our team, one of the faster players on our team, great personality. So we want to be hopefully getting his close to 300 batting average production into our lineup as soon as we possibly can and as often as we can. And as the calendar turns to the month of May, the first full month of the season was actually pretty rough for the Pirates. You can see we were 12-16 in the month of April after that 2-0, actually 3-0 start, but we're 3-7 in our last 10 games. We are 10th in the National League in runs scored, and we are 6th in runs allowed. So our pitching staff is right where it was a year ago. We finished last year 6th in runs allowed, so from that perspective would hope that the starters get better. The bullpen's been lights out. But with the fact that we got rid of one of our top starting pitchers and we felt like we were adding a couple of players and bringing back an additional player who could potentially help our offense, the fact that our offense has dropped from 4th in the league to 10th thus far this season is certainly not what we were expecting. Obviously still a pretty small sample size of just 30 games. Have to hope that having Mr. Flores back in the lineup regularly will help. You can see he's 5 for his first 20, so not as easy to hit at the major league level as it was for him in the International League. But also getting to the point with both Mr. Bindaoud and Mr. Valadez where we're going to have to think about potentially moving one of them out of the rotation, if not both of them out of the rotation. Maybe give Bobby Astorga and Omar Gaona a chance. Would like to probably give them each at least 2 more starts to get up to 8 starts, but if their ERAs aren't below 6 by another week and a half, 2 weeks from now, probably going to be time to either move those guys into the bullpen or down to AAA and see if there's something we can do to get a little better pitching out of the back end of that starting rotation. And the good news is that nobody did claim Tony Rendon. Not sure whether he's going to accept the assignment to AAA, but he does, so that's good. So we still got Rendon in our system. He could definitely be an important player for us, not just this season, but into the future. But right now, with the fact that we do have Tomei on the team, not an obvious spot for him. And we're still trying to see what we've got with Ruacho. I do think that bat is major league ready at this point, and he has gotten his batting average up to 203. So I think that it was the right move to send Rendon down, but not going to lie, I am pleased that nobody grabbed him from us. And we just had to put Alex Ruacho, who we were talking about not that long ago, on the injured list. Only going to be banged up for about a week, but Luis Flores is also out with a sore back for the next few days, so felt like we needed another offensive player. And we're going to bring up Joel Fields. Probably we'll send him back down afterwards. He was one of our final cuts because we did want to make sure that he got regular at-bats. But with Ruacho out, he should be getting pretty regular at-bats at the major league level. You can see he was hitting 296 in AAA with 5 home runs and 98 at-bats. So he's a player who could have exceptional power at some point, viewed as the number 60 prospect in baseball. Was our first-round pick just 2 years ago. So Mr. Fields will get to see what he can do at the major league level over the next week and a half. And he doesn't slot into the lineup right now, but we are actually going to change that. We are going to make sure that he's getting at-bats against left-handers that otherwise would have gone to Vinny Tomei. And we're also actually going to let him play left field, even though he's not that great defensively compared to Isaiah Hill. Figure we will give our superstar a little bit of extra rest against left-handed pitchers by letting him not have to play the field on those days. And we've made it to the middle of the month, still scuffling along, not even 500 on the year. Taking a look at the standings, we're already 9 games out, 4th place in the division, so not going well. And when we check in on our pitching staff, you can see that Bin Daoud and Valadez have gotten a little better. Unfortunately, Montoya's gotten worse. But because those ERAs have moved under 6, I'm gonna keep them both in the rotation for the time being. But actually, I'm not. Valadez's Sierra is 4.20. Given up a lot of hits, 152 whip. He just hasn't been all that great. But he's a young guy who's developing. Bin Daoud, 440 Sierra, also whip a little better at 137. I think I'm willing to continue experiencing the growing pains from these two guys for a little while longer. But I do kind of feel like I've got to see improvement. If we check in on them at the end of the month, kind of want Valadez to have an ERA below 5, and Bin Daoud has got to be in the low 5s. They've got to be pitching better to keep those spots, but not going to yank them out quite yet. But certainly with the way Bobby Astorga has been pitching in relief and Omar Gaona has been pitching in very limited options as a left-handed specialist, either of those guys, I think, could potentially take the 4th and or 5th roles in our rotation, and certainly would not expect them to do much worse than either of these guys, and in all probability think either of them would probably do better. But these guys are young, and their ERAs are slowly improving, so not going to yank them out of the rotation quite yet. But there will be a point where we just get too far behind if we don't start winning some games soon. You can see right now we're only 3.5 out of the wild card. A lot of teams to jump over to get back in there, but it's not a critical situation quite yet. And we have been playing a little better over the past 5 or 6 games. Got up just over 500 right now at 24 and 23. Ruacho is able to come back. Check in on what Joel Fields has done. Gotten into 9 games, so it's good that we've gotten him some action. Did hit a solo home run, but hitting just 235 with a 297 on base percentage. We're going to send him back to AAA, bring Ruacho back up. And, Vinny Tomei is not even in the lineup against, but that's because, I don't know why that is. I think I am going to change that. I'm going to put Gonzalez in right, and we're not giving up on Vinny Tomei yet. Hitting only 214, does have 8 doubles and 5 homers and 126 at-bats, so still close to league average in terms of his OPS plus. He may just be completely done at this point. It's possible, but want to try to continue to get him some regular playing time. And I think we are also going to, even though we'll lose a little bit of defense, keep Isaiah Hill in a DH role against lefties. Hopefully that helps us keep him a little healthier, because without him, our offense is a disaster. He's hitting just 266 this year, which for him is by far the lowest batting average of his career, but the 14 homers and the 29 runs driven in, you can see the 14 homers are still third in the National League, so he has still been a pretty important bat for us in the middle of our lineup. And the Pirates starting to play a little better. Record up to 26-23. And Arturo Arellano, our center fielder, was Player of the Week last year. 14 hits and 29 at-bats, including 6 homers and 12 ribbies. Starting to approach Isaiah Hill in terms of his home run total with 13. So the young center fielder was a very important Rule 5 draft pick for us a couple of years ago. We dealt with his growing pains last season, and he has taken over as our starting center fielder so far here in 2045, and doing a good job for us as the Pirates are starting to play a bit better lately. And just a few days after winning Player of the Week, Arturo Arellano going to be out with a strained hammy for about 5 weeks. So that is, to use one of my catchphrases, not optimal. I think for center field, it's going to mean that we're probably going to move Ramon Herrera back in just because he's the best defensively. But I may overrule that, quite honestly. Going to bring Fields back, see what he can do. Mario Quiroz at catcher while we're thinking about it. Still hitting 321. Obviously, that batting average is moving in the wrong direction, but had thought that we would have Rodriguez up by now, but he's hitting just $167 in AAA, so I don't feel any need to rush him up, even though he's angry about being in the minors, given that Quiroz is hitting and he is not. Nelson Ibarra also has the average up to 200, so he's been hitting better more recently too, as the Pirates have been playing better. Interesting in seeing what our manager will want to do. Like I said, I think he's going to put Herrera in center, but we may go for a little bit extra offense, because I'd like to see what Fields can do in terms of his bat in the majors. Kind of know what we have with Herrera, and he's not a bad player by any stretch of the imagination, but he's 32 years old, and I feel better with him kind of being a backup at this point in his career. Ruacho is probably a better choice for center field than Gonzalez. Yeah, he's got better outfield range. I don't think Isaiah Hill's not a bad choice either, but We are going to force start Mr. Ruacho in center field. Definitely going to lose a little bit of defense, no doubt about it, but want to put the best lineup out there possible. And you can see still doesn't mean that there's any playing time for Fields, but I am going to overrule that. Send Vinny Tomei to the bench against lefties, get Fields into the lineup at left field, and once again, hopefully DHing a couple days a week may help keep Mr. Hill a little healthier, hopefully. And Ramon Herrera, not happy that he's not starting in center field, but a little less concerned about what a 32-year-old who's a fourth or fifth outfielder at this point in his career thinks, as opposed to some of our really young players in the cases of Ruacho and Joel Fields, who are getting that playing time at his expense, who could be contributors to our team for many seasons to come, hopefully. And although we've struggled a little bit over the last couple of days, we're finishing up the month of May and beginning June with a winning record, only 3 games back. And keeping Sal Valadez in the rotation has definitely paid off. He was the NL Pitcher of the Month, 1.08 ERA, 4-0 record, 39 strikeouts in 33 1/3 innings, and held batters to a 188 average. His record now 5-4 with a 3.88 ERA. Not surprisingly, was also named Rookie of the Month. So, checking in on the standings at this point, as I mentioned, we are 3 games out in the division, and we are 2.5 games out of the wild card. So, losing 3 in a row to end the month, not exactly what we were hoping for. But we still definitely did make some progress in the month of May. Taking a look at the team statistics, you can see 16-12, so totally reversed what we had done in April. Runs scored, still struggling, 12th in the National League, but runs allowed, we're tied for second, still have the best bullpen in the NL, and our starters' ERA is coming down. Taking a look at the pitchers, Longoria has been really good. Valadez has been exceptional lately. Gonzalez has been Gonzalez. But both Montoya and Bin Daoud have been disappointing. Montoya, we do have higher expectations for at this point. The concern with him is just that slider has just not ever really developed, and he's almost 27 years old. I think not having that effective third pitch is probably limiting his success as a starting pitcher. We had picked him up, as you probably remember if you've been watching, in a potentially ill-fated trade where we traded away one of the top hitters in baseball, Angel Aguilar, when he was still a prospect to the Angels, and he is obviously having an excellent career. The reason we were able to give up Aguilar is that, one, we thought we were getting a potential very good major league starter in return in Montoya. Number 2, we did know that we had in our organization a lot of good quality outfielders. Gonzalez, Hill was already up. We knew we had Ruacho coming. We didn't know we had Fields coming at the time that we traded him, but had some outfield depth. But clearly, if all we end up getting for Aguilar is someone who ends up being a good bullpen arm, that's not really the return that we were looking for, because the other player that we got, Ethan Fox, is a guy who we thought could be a starting third baseman for us, who's really more of a utility guy at this point, and hitting only 205 this year after a 286 and a 284 average his first 2 seasons with us. So not ready to give up on either Fox or Montoya yet, but if that slider does not really start to develop, he might have to go to the bullpen. And you can see our scout still thinks he can do something there. The OSA thinks it kind of is what it is at this point, which is probably not great. And honestly, I'm thinking about moving Montoya out of the rotation the more that I think about it. I know it's saying that we should move Bin Daoud out of the rotation because he's another guy whose slider hasn't really developed. Both of these guys are going to be bullpen arms if they can't develop that third pitch to a higher level. I think I am going to force... I like Bin Daoud, and he's pitching a bit better lately, and the ERA down to 5.37. But looking at him with the same issue that we have with Montoya, that third pitch just isn't there, we are going to force him into a relief role for now. And Vasquez is doing what we wanted him to do. Give Bobby Astorga, the other rookie, a chance to start some games. His fastball is his only plus pitch, but he's got an acceptable sinker and changeup and a curveball that's not quite major league average, but a fourth pitch rather than a relatively ineffective third pitch. He's been pretty effective out of the bullpen. Would expect that his ERA probably will move up somewhat being a starter. Hopefully Bin Daoud's will move down being in the bullpen. We'll see what happens. And if this does work, there's a chance that we'll move Montoya to the bullpen if his slider doesn't really develop either over the next month or so, because we do have Omar Gaona, who's only pitched 4 1/3 innings this year. Would certainly like to get more out of him than facing a single left-handed batter once or twice a week. In the month of June, going really well for the Pirates so far. You can see we swept the Mets, then we did lose 2 out of 3 to Atlanta, but have subsequently swept the Brewers. And that puts us into first place in the NL Central. Game ahead of Cincinnati and a game and a half against a game and a half above both Milwaukee and St. Louis. So you can see a very tight division, 4 teams separated by just a game and a half, but we've won 4 in a row and playing our best baseball of the year. Hopefully it can stay that way, because you see we've got a big 4-game series at home against Cincinnati this week. And as we get near the end of the month of June, Pirates still in first, but Arturo Arellano going to be out for at least another week with that strained hammy. So, we're playing fine without him. So from that perspective, not in horrible shape, but clearly would prefer him to have him back sooner rather than later. Check in on how Joel Fields is doing, since he's the one who would likely be sent down. And he's definitely struggling at the major league level. 227 batting average with just 1 home run and 97 at-bats. So not going to feel too bad that we may have to send him back for a little more seasoning in AAA. Looks like Luis Flores is day-to-day with a strained hammy for 4 weeks, though. I think I'm going to have to be pretty conservative about how I treat that injury. So we're actually going to... it's got a moderate impact on his running. And he's a player for whom speed is pretty important, being a guy with decent contact and good gap power. I think we're just asking for trouble and for that strained hammy to turn into something that's going to really ruin his season. It's going to stink to potentially lose him for close to a month. but there is a chance that having him on the IL, he'll heal up a little better. That'll allow us to get Rendon back up, although he really hasn't hit much at all in AAA. But I think that still a guy that I believe could help us for the long term. So we'll bring Rendon up now. Obviously, our whole lineup is going to be very different now. Vinny Tomei getting some even extra playing time. I think I actually am going to put Ethan Fox into first base rather than Tomei against lefties. Tomei, hasn't earned the opportunity to be in the lineup every day with the way he's hit for us. He should be better against righties than he is against lefties. And we'll take a look at his stats this year, hitting 216 overall, 221 against righties. So slightly better against righties than he is against lefties, but definitely not a guy that I'm going to force to be in the lineup every day at this point. And we've gotten to our mid-year review, and we are half a game behind in the division now, but ownership reasonably content that we're in position to make a run at the playoffs. Have improved our defensive efficiency to fourth. That was one of our big goals of the season. Not pleased that we did not re-sign Alex Vasquez after having him for a couple months at the end of last year, and hoping that we can still continue to increase attendance. Attendance has gotten a little better over the last couple of weeks as we've been playing better baseball, but still fan interest is in the mediocre range, and our revenue per game is actually down compared to last year, despite the higher ticket price, since our attendance has not gotten back to where it was. That said, we are heading into July shortly when we're going to be perusing the trade block pretty aggressively, and hopefully we can find a good player who the fans are also interested in watching as we try to guide these Pirates back into the playoffs. And Arturo Arellano is still suffering from that strained hamstring. His recovery is unclear. Again, that makes me feel even better about being real conservative with Flores and putting him on the IL also, because those strained hammies can just kind of linger. So hopefully we'll have them both back sometime in July. But we're half a game out without either of them in the lineup. Flores we've had for 49 games. Arellano we've had for 50 games. So, we've missed both of those guys for well over a month at this point with the various injuries they've had. And we're hanging in there. So if we can get the team healthy and well, I think we're still definitely well positioned to get this team back to the playoffs. As I talked about at the beginning of the episode, that's not the only goal. Certainly want this team to make a longer postseason run than we typically have, and I think the easiest way for us to do that is to hopefully have home field advantage and a first round bye when we get to the playoffs. Right now, if the season were to end today, we would have that. We would not have that. We're half a game behind, not half a game ahead. So we'd be on the road for a wild card series. But if we got by Milwaukee, that would leave us with a better record than the Mets, which would mean that Colorado in the Central Division winner would be the team with the byes. So we are not too far from where we would like to be. And as we get to the month of July, past the midway point of the season, Pirates 48-37, still half a game out, second place. Did just beat the Cubs 2-0 yesterday. Luis Longoria, NL top hurler in the month of June. 48 strikeouts in 38 innings, 4-0 record. Held opponents to a 156 average. You can see for the year 10-3 with a 2.12 ERA. So the brilliant pitcher, at least in terms of his profile, really seems to have put it all together this year. The goal is going to be to keep him healthy until we can get into a potential playoff berth. But he looks like he could be a candidate for the Cy Young Award if he is healthy over the second half of the season. And our patience with Sal Valadez appears to be also paying off. He won Rookie of the Month for a second consecutive season, 3-2 record for the month of June, 1.69 ERA, and you can see for the year, 8-6 record now with a 3.10 ERA. So given that he was a guy whose ERA was in the mid fives in mid-May, I believe, definitely early May, and I think also mid-May, he has been pitching brilliantly recently. And we'll check in on the entire team before we finish off the episode, but the one other thing we want to do is also look at the international amateur free agent signing period. You can see it looks like there's a couple interesting batters at the top of the draft, usually not so much in terms of pitchers. Oscar Serra certainly looks interesting, though, this year. Don't have the greatest scouting accuracy on him, but he's a durable 17-year-old. Looks like he could have plus stuff, movement, and control, and a potential 4 or 5 pitch repertoire. Enough stamina to certainly be a starter. Not the greatest pitcher in the world at holding on runners, but definitely an interesting prospect if we don't love any of the position players. We'll take a look at the top 3 here with all of you. Jose Quere, first baseman, good work ethic, horrible fielder, not a lot of speed. Looks like he could have a pretty nice bat, though, and do like the durability. Young player, too, only 16 and a half years old. Angel Palma, a right fielder, also durable, also no speed whatsoever. An acceptable-ish left or right fielder. Looks like he could have a pretty interesting bat, but not a world-changing bat, in my opinion. Manilo Bocanera, second baseman, also durable, 16 years old, soon to be 17. Not the greatest defensive player in the world. Do like the high work ethic paired with the high intelligence. Looks like he could be a bit above average as a hitter. Has a little bit of speed. Nelson Ramirez, the center fielder. Don't love the personality. A lot of durable players available this year. Looks like a decent-ish bat. Hector Alvarado, another center fielder. A fine prospect, but not all that exciting. And then there's a couple of catchers. Andres Lozano. Looks like he could be tons of durable guys coming through the international amateur free agents this year. Going to struggle as a major league hitter, but decent defensively. Certainly looks like he could be a good backup. Gabe Vieira, don't love the personality. A little better bat. Don't love the glove. Honestly, I'm going to try to go after the pitcher. I don't love any of the prospects this year, but Sarah can always use pitching. Says he's only looking for 4.6. We're going to offer him the full 5 and hope for the best. And taking a look at the pitching, Longoria, we've already talked about, probably in contention for a Cy Young Award. Bobby Gonzalez tied with him for the team lead with 10 wins. The veteran has a 3.09 ERA, so he's doing his job. Jose Montoya is the guy who's struggling. His ERA is up close to 6, 4-9 record, and that slider is just not going anywhere. Just not getting better. He's 27 years old. We've tried to make him a starter. I mean, he started 70 games in his career at this point, and he's got a 5.05 ERA, a 147 WHIP, 323 BABIP, 4.42 SIERA, 2.4 WAR for his career. I mean, he's been a little bit above replacement level, but it may be time to move him to the pen. Valadez, we talked about having a really nice rookie year. He was the guy that we took at the top of the second round in our first draft with this team in 2038. Took our time to try to develop him as well as possible and get him to the majors, when he was ready. And thus far, it seems to be working out. Bobby Astorga, as expected, his ERA is going up while he's been in the starting rotation, and Juan Bin Daoud's ERA is going down as he's been in the bullpen, but don't see any need to change that right now. Ricky Rios, 23 saves, 3.43 ERA. Greg Gaylord following up his Reliever of the Year award with a 2.79 ERA this year. Mike Wright, a $1.98. Mingo and Danny Robles both have ERAs below 3. And Omar Gaona, a 1.29 ERA in minimal playing time. I am going to force Montoya into the bullpen. I think we've given him enough opportunity to develop that slider and prove that he can be a good major league starter, and it's just not happening right now. So we're going to put him into the bullpen for the time being and see. I'm hoping to move Gaona into the 5-hole. We'll see what the manager wants to do. He wants to move Juan Bin Daoud back into the rotation. Interesting. Not ready to do that because the slider for Bin Daoud is no better either, and he has been more effective in the bullpen. So we're going to really start forcing things here on our manager, make him ultimately give us what we want. And what we want is Mr. Gaona, who has kind of alternated over his Pittsburgh career between being a fifth starter for us when he's been pitching 140, 170, 180 innings a year. And he's alternated that with being a left-handed specialist out of the bullpen when we've had years with 38, 20, and 23 innings. And he was being used even less this year. But he has been a pretty respectable fifth starter for us over the years. So we're going to see what the bullpen looks like in the month of July, or the rotation looks like in the month of July, headed up by Longoria and Gonzalez. Keep Valadez and Astorga in there and get Gaona into the number 5 hole and see how that works out for us. And turning to our everyday players, starting catcher Nelson Ibarra hitting just .218, negative WAR on the year despite the fact that he's a pretty good defensive catcher. So that is certainly not what our expectation was, but he was hitting much lower a month and a half or so ago. And it's also his 28th birthday, so we're not going to have him lose his job over that. Hopefully he can hit better the rest of the way. I think we'll get a positive WAR out of him when all is said and done. Have gotten positive WAR from backup catcher Mario Quiroz. Hitting .278, so not as exceptional as he had been hitting. Still think that at some point we want to see what Chris Rodriguez can do in the majors. He's got his batting average up to .202 in AAA, so he's just not hitting enough that there's a reason to really move on from Quiroz at this point, unfortunately. Vinny Tomei has definitely been disappointing. .215 batting average and 219 at-bats, just 5 home runs. Fortunately, we did not make a long-term commitment. We're hoping he would be a useful bat against right-handed pitching for us, and really has not been this year. Bobby Guzman, our new second baseman, hitting 256, not a lot of power. Definitely not what we expected. Put up a 4.1 WAR a year ago with an above-average OPS plus and WRC plus. We're not definitely expecting to get that type of offensive production, but certainly we're expecting better than we've gotten from him. Expected him to be a little better on the base paths also. 6 stolen bases and 5 caught stealing. He has definitely been disappointing with the bat. Looking at his fielding ratings, his zone rating and his defensive efficiency at second base are both pretty solid, though. I think he's been a at least contributor to the improved defense that we've had this year. Juan Rivera hitting 327 off the bench as a utility infielder. Ethan Fox is the batting average up to 227, certainly hoping for more than that. Willie Madrano, our new third baseman, has definitely been a big bonus there in terms of the bat. Kind of thought he was a guy, 230, 240 hitter, 15, 20, 25 home runs. Definitely outperforming that at this point with a 258 batting average and 17 homers through the beginning of July. So definitely looks like should get into the high 20s in home runs, maybe even the low 30s. If he keeps that batting average up over 250, he'll be a pretty useful offensive player. He's already matched his WAR from last season, so he's been a nice addition for us. Tony Rendon, just back up from the minors. We'll see if he can hopefully hit a little better. Shortstop Tony Cota, very good defensively, but struggling this year with the bat, hitting just 218. The worst offensive performance we've ever had from him, unfortunately. Joel Fields, we talked about a little while back. He has not been as good defensively or as good offensively as we had hoped. Just 1 homer and 105 at-bats, despite a profile that looks like he should be a pretty good home run hitter. He will end up back in the minors most likely once Arellano and or Flores are healthy. Once both of those players are healthy, we'll probably need to send Rendon down again and hope that we can sneak him through waivers one more time. Isaiah Hill, in what could be his final year with the Pirates, is not having a vintage season. That 249 batting average, by far the worst of his career. 48 runs batted in through 80 games that he has played, and looks like 85 games for the team is just not the type of offensive season we expect from him. A 126 OPS plus, 120 WRC plus, and a 2.1 WAR through the first half of the season are good, solid years for most players, but we need to get more out of Isaiah Hill in the second half of the season, and certainly if we don't, the fact that his contract next year is going to be $29 million will make it a little less painful for us to move on from him if he's coming off of the worst season in his career. And again, everything is by degrees. The worst season of his career is still going to be close to 40 home runs, over 90 runs driven in, probably an all-star for the 7th time in 7 years. But when you are on the short list of Rookie of the Years who were also MVP, that short list with Fred Lynn, Hall of Famer Ichiro, the expectations are pretty high, and I think Isaiah Hill would even admit that he hasn't had the type of season he's used to at this point. Ramon Herrera hitting 207 as a backup outfielder, but pretty versatile defensively and solid defensively, so he'll have a role on this team. The rookie Alex Ruacho, .279 average, 17 doubles, 3 triples, 8 home runs, and 244 at-bats. We've been forcing him into center field where once we do get Arellano back, he certainly won't be our everyday center fielder, but wanted to see what the rookie could do with the bat playing every day rather than Herrera, even though Herrera is a better defensive center fielder, and think that's the right thing to do because definitely have seen some development in his batting ratings over the course of the season. And last but not least, Henry Gonzalez, 2043 Rookie of the Year, former #1 overall pick in our first draft with the Pirates, and he's kind of trending the wrong direction over the course of his career. Was an All-Star and a Rookie of the Year his first season, All-Star last year. This season so far, he's barely an above-average offensive player, and his WAR is less than 1 on the year, hitting just .263, only 8 home runs and 278 at-bats. The batting profile suggests that he should be more productive than that. The weird thing is he's not even walking this year. You can see he walked over 100 times each of his first 2 seasons. Just 39 bases on balls this year, despite an eye that still looks to be probably one of the best in baseball. So hopefully it's just been bad luck, or maybe he needs to get fitted for new contacts or something. But definitely would think that we could get more out of Gonzalez and Isaiah Hill in the second half of the season. And if we are able to get more out of those two offensively, and hopefully get Flores and Arellano back in this month of July, that should help the Pirates go a long way towards improving an offense that is 10th in the National League at this point. The pitching is exceptional. First in runs allowed, first in bullpen ERA, starter ERA down to 4th, with the fact that Longoria and Valadez and even Gonzalez at this point are all having really, really strong seasons. Still questionable what those 4th and 5th spots are going to deliver. We moved Astorga into the rotation a few weeks ago. You can see he's got 5 starts now, and Gayon is going to be back in the rotation. We'll see if Bin Daoud and Montoya can continue to be more effective coming out of the bullpen. You know, just looking at the pitchers we have in the bullpen right now, obviously star ratings are not a perfect analogy, but these are all guys who have the stamina to start, and a lot of these guys have 2.5, 3, 4 pitch arsenals. Our bullpen is pretty intimidating looking. So if we continue to get 5 starters with ERAs below 4, with the bullpen that we have, I think this team can potentially do a lot of damage. Obviously did a lot of damage in June with an 18-9 record, won 2/3 of our games. As I mentioned, we're not in first yet, half a game behind the Brewers. It's still in a pretty good race with 4 teams separated by 5 games at the top of the division. So it's going to be quite a battle to see if we can not only win the division, but even just make the playoffs. I mean, we're up 1 on the 3rd wild card spot at this point, but we're only 2 games from being out of the playoffs too. So it is going to be a big battle for the playoffs this year. I do feel like with the fact that we've got 2 pretty important players on the IL and a couple of big bats that hopefully will perform better. And, there's also hope that Vinny Tomei eventually bats better in the second half of the season, too. So if we can keep the pitching healthy, and most importantly, if we can keep Luis Longoria healthy for the whole season, and we do have him on that 90 pitch count, we do have him with the aggressive tiredness hook, going to do everything possible to get him through the season. But if Longoria remains healthy, Gonzalez continues to pitch like he was 5 or 10 years younger than he is, Valadez continues to be a contender for Rookie of the Year. I think we're going to be in the playoffs. We've still got a lot of work to do, as I said. We're only a couple games away from being out of the playoffs at this point, but we do have some money to go and find some help in the month of July. And in our next episode, we're going to not just figure out what to do as we get closer to the trade deadline. We are also going to conduct the amateur draft, find out how we did with the international amateur free agent pitcher that we just made an offer to, and also find out who is named an all-star for the Pirates here in 2045. And we'll focus on all of that in our next episode. Until then, I would love to hear what you think of how the season's going, what we could do better in the comments down below. And until our next episode, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.